Welcome to The Deep Dive, the podcast where we sweat the small stuff so you don't have to. From real stories to expert advice, we're here to uncover everything about hyperhidrosis and empower you to take control. Ready to dive into the world of sweat and solutions? Let's make a splash.
All right, so today we're going deep into the world of Hyperhidrosis Awareness Kenya.
Yeah.
Based on one of their podcast episodes.
Cool.
And I think, listeners are going to find this really fascinating.
I think so too.
Because it really gives us a glimpse into what it's like to live with this condition, especially in a place like Kenya.
Yeah.
Where resources and awareness might be a bit different than what we're used to.
Right.
You know what I really loved about the podcast was how they started it.
Yeah.
It opens with this really powerful image of waking up to a beautiful sunrise. You're feeling refreshed.
Yeah.
But then you're immediately hit with all these messages from people who are struggling with, excessive sweating.
Right.
And it just makes you think wow, this is something that's really affecting people's lives.
Yeah. It's not just a medical term, right?
No.
It's like a lived experience. So many people.
And the podcast host, who, by the way, is also the founder of Hyperhidrosis Awareness Kenya, goes on to share these stories from, a student, a young professional, and even a bride-to-be.
Wow, a bride-to-be.
All facing different challenges because of hyperhidrosis.
I see.
And what's fascinating is how the host responds to each of them. It's not just generic advice,
Right.
It's tailored to their specific situation.
It's awesome.
So for the student who's, worried about social anxiety, there's a focus on coping mechanisms and building confidence.
Makes sense.
For the professional, it's about, practical solutions like breathable clothing and discreet sweat management techniques.
I see.
And then for the bride-to-be, who's obviously, concerned about sweating on her big day.
Of course.
The host talks about the importance of open communication with her partner.
Oh, that's great.
And even suggests a pre-wedding trial run with makeup and attire.
Wow, to minimize the stress.
Exactly.
That's really thoughtful.
I thought that was brilliant. It shows that they really understand the nuances of this condition.
Definitely.
And that they're not just giving surface level advice.
Right.
And speaking of going deeper, there was this mention of a hashtag 7 years of advocacy campaign.
Okay.
Which just, highlights how long they've been doing this work. And what really struck me was that they didn't just talk about raising awareness.
Right.
They actually partnered with dermatologists.
Oh, wow. So they're really getting into the medical side of things.
Yeah, and I think that's huge because, healthcare access can be a major hurdle.
Sure.
Especially for something like hyperhidrosis, which, let's be honest, isn't always seen as a serious medical condition by the general public or even some medical professionals.
Yeah, it's easy to dismiss.
Exactly.
When you don't understand the impact it has.
And they didn't just stop at consultations.
Oh, really?
During this campaign, they actually subsidized some treatments.
Wow, that's amazing.
Iontophoresis, which uses a mild electrical current to reduce sweating.
I've heard of that.
So they're actually helping people afford the care they need.
That's incredible.
And, it just speaks to their commitment
to
really improving the lives of people living with this condition.
For sure.
And then towards the end of the podcast, they share this really heartbreaking message from a high school student.
Oh, no.
Who's being bullied because of their sweating.
Oh, that's so sad.
And it's just a stark reminder of the emotional toll this can take.
Yeah, especially for young people who are already dealing with so much.
And it brings us back to that core idea of sweat without shame.
Right. Their tagline.
Yeah, it's not just about finding physical solutions.
Yeah.
It's about, fostering self-acceptance and challenging the stigma that surrounds this condition.
Absolutely. And that's where the community aspect comes in, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to know you're not alone.
Yeah.
But it's so powerful to actually connect with people who get it.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
I've definitely had moments where I felt self-conscious about sweating,
Sure.
Especially in social situations.
Right.
But I can't even imagine how much more intense that must be.
Oh, absolutely.
For someone with hyperhidrosis.
It's like a whole other level.
And that's why what Hyperhidrosis Awareness Kenya is doing is so important.
Totally.
They're creating a safe space for people to, share their experiences, find support, and realize they're not defined by this condition.
It's huge.
And they're using social media really effectively for that.
Yeah, I noticed.
Like they mentioned online forums and even WhatsApp groups. And they're not just using it for peer support. They're also using it to debunk myths and share accurate information.
That's smart.
Like they had this whole series of posts addressing common misconceptions.
Like what?
Like the idea that, excessive sweating is caused by poor hygiene.
Oh, right.
Which is obviously not true. But it's something that people believe.
It's so important to fight those stereotypes.
Exactly.
And educate people.
So they're like, actively changing public perception, but they're also empowering individuals.
Right. Giving them a voice.
Yeah, they encourage people to talk openly about their experiences.
I love that.
To advocate for themselves.
Yes.
And to seek help.
It's a really proactive approach.
It's not about, just accepting your condition passively. It's about owning it.
Yeah, taking control.
It's ways to thrive.
That's what makes their message so powerful.
Yeah.
It's like, you might have this condition, but it doesn't have to control your life.
And for our listeners who are thinking, okay, this is all great, but what about actual solutions?
Right.
What are some of the things that Hyperhidrosis Awareness Kenya recommends?
Well, they talk about a lot of different options.
Okay.
Depending on, the severity and the person's preferences. So they start with lifestyle changes, like wearing breathable fabrics.
Okay.
Avoiding certain foods that can trigger sweating.
So practical things you can do on your own.
Exactly.
And then they also talk about medical treatments.
Right.
Like antiperspirants, of course.
Sure.
But also prescription medications. And even procedures like Botox injections.
Wow. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, it can temporarily block the nerves that stimulate sweat glands.
Interesting.
And for some people, they might even suggest surgery.
Really?
But they emphasize that that's usually for severe cases.
Right. Makes sense.
What about that iontophoresis treatment they mentioned?
Oh, yeah. That's another non-invasive option that they seem to really like.
How does that work?
It uses a mild electrical current to reduce sweating.
So it's more targeted.
Yeah. Usually on the hands and feet.
I see.
It doesn't work for everyone, but it can be really effective for some people.
It sounds like they really try to cover all the bases.
They do. They're very thorough.
Which is great.
Yeah. It's not about pushing one solution.
Right. It's about giving people the information they need.
To make their own decisions.
Exactly. Informed decisions.
About their own care.
And that brings us back to empowerment.
Yeah.
Giving people the tools and the knowledge to take control.
I'm really impressed by what Hyperhidrosis Awareness Kenya is doing.
Me too. They're doing amazing work.
They're a great example of how a small organization can make a big impact.
Absolutely.
By combining advocacy with practical solutions.
And really understanding the human experience.
Yeah.
It's not just about the physical stuff.
Right.
It's about the emotional and social impact too.
And their message of sweat without shame is something we can all learn from.
For sure.
Whether we have hyperhidrosis or not.
It's a reminder that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And we need to support each other.
And embrace our differences.
Absolutely.
It's interesting, right? Because we talk about diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
But we don't always think about the things we can't see.
So true.
Like hyperhidrosis.
It's made me realize how much I take for granted. Like shaking someone's hand.
Yeah.
Or even just wearing a certain shirt.
It's something you never even think about.
Exactly.
Until you realize.
But for someone with this condition, it can be a big deal.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that we need more empathy.
For sure.
We need to be more understanding.
Everyone's fighting their own battles.
And I think Hyperhidrosis Awareness Kenya is doing a great job of creating a more inclusive world.
They're not just focused on the physical symptoms.
Oh, right.
They're tackling the stigma too.
Sweat without shame.
Such a powerful message.
It's about embracing who you are.
And not letting your differences define you.
So for anyone listening out there, if you're dealing with hyperhidrosis or any other condition that makes you feel different,
you're not alone.
There is hope.
Absolutely.
And remember, the next time you see someone who seems a little flustered or sweaty, pause before you judge.
You never know what someone's going through.
A little kindness can go a long way.
So true.
Well, that's our deep dive for today.
Thanks for having me.
It was great having you.
It was a really important conversation.
And for our listeners, we hope you found this insightful.
And remember,
sweat without shame.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.
You've been listening to The Deep Dive because understanding sweat is the first step to thriving. Remember to subscribe, share, and connect with us on Hyperhidrosis Awareness Kenya socials. Together, we can stay cool, confident, and unstoppable. Until next time, keep shining. No sweat.